I'm so excited to be here. I'm Sandy, and today I'm going to talk to you about something I'm super passionate about. It's really the combination, the convergence, the intersection of content design and content engineering. Because content isn't really, it's not about words anymore. It's about data, it's about structure. It's smart. That means it's connected. And that means the way we work has to shift too. So I'm really excited to be here with the Content Folks group to share my perspective and my experience on this topic. But before we get into it, I think it's really important for you to know a little bit about me. I'm the founder of Blueberry. So it's a small consulting firm that I started last year with food tech companies and food creators. Those are my clients. And I specialize in structured content, content operations, and digital strategy with a focus on how recipe data can drive platform success. So I think about recipes in a really unique way. When I see a recipe, I see metadata, I see JSON code, uh, and I see a really good meal too. So a lot of the examples that I use whenever I talk about this topic always surrounds around food. I try not to do that today, so it could be a little bit more inclusive, but there's always a food example somehow running in my head. My background spans tech, publishing, and food. I've worked with a lot of startups, so that means I wore a lot of hats. But in the last 5 years, I've really niched down and focused on structured content, content engineering. And that overlap is where I found the most interesting problems to solve. I help clients take their content from messy to making sense. And so that means restructuring thousands of recipes or building systems for multi-channel distribution. But I'm broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA. That's not where I'm from. I'm originally from Miami, but I lived in China for 9 years, and in 2023, I moved back. Maybe if you connect with me, I'll tell you that whole story. But it was an amazing experience. But my time in China also overlapped with my experience with content. So I wanted to share a brief story about being dropped into a tech team with no content experience at all. When I moved to Shanghai, I landed a role on a food tech team, a food startup, and I didn't have a tech background. I didn't even know what UX was. My background was in government finance. I did that for 10 years. I had never followed a recipe on an app before. And then I was asked to cook a recipe from the app, photograph the results. But the assignment from the beginning taught me how much structure matters in content. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning to think like an engineer. Back then, if you weren't on the content team, you were an engineer. It was a very small team of 12 to start off with. So I really worked hands-on with them and learned a lot of the things that still help me today. I bet a lot of you have been in the same situation without even without realizing it. You know, many of us are accidental engineers, but that's really a good thing. So that's a little bit about my background. And since then, I've really seen the importance of merging all the content disciplines and seeing how we can apply them while we still specialize. But what are some of the things from other content disciplines that we can own and also support our organizations in success? So traditionally, content has meant copy, um, something that lived on a page or a screen, but that's no longer true. We all know that. That's why there's content engineers, content designers, content operations. Content today is modular, reusable, omnipresent. That means on every channel. It lives in emails, apps, search results, voice assistants, and chat interfaces. And it has to make sense everywhere. So let's pause here. So think about how your content gets used where you work. Do you write for just one format, or do you know it will be adapted in some other form? Is it repurposed manually, or does it move through a system? Are you writing content or creating a content experience? So I've seen in the last 5 years a big shift in content that's not just technical, but it's strategic. So we've gone from creating one-off deliverables to maintaining ecosystems, from hand writing messages to creating scalable system-ready modules. We're moving from, and as content designers, you know what I mean by this. We're going from thinking screen by screen to thinking component by component. So when you embrace these ideas, this shift, this new way of approaching content, everything about your content practice changes. So you stop designing for the page and start designing for reuse. You stop being the end of the process and start co-owning the system. I'm sure all of us can relate to, it going from one team to the other, engineering, product, marketing, and maybe being at the end when it should have been more of a collaborative situation from the beginning. So my presentation is not about making writers into developers. It's about understanding that content is part of a network, not a one-time output. So yeah, content is still creation, but it's also configuration. It's infrastructure. And when you understand both, your role becomes more influential, more scalable, and way more impactful. I remember when I was just starting in content and I wore all the content hats, I really had to level up my understanding of what the engineers were talking about in every meeting. There was a lot of Googling going on from my laptop as I realized MVP was not the most valuable player, but the minimum viable product to release. And what being a product owner meant. And maybe that was me for the features that I was contributing to. So really understanding some elements about what content engineering involves may make your role as a content designer or any other content discipline more powerful. So this matters because as content designers, you're being asked to sit in product, in development, in operations meeting. You're sitting there. And first of all, if you're in the room, congratulations to you, because that is already a big step in the right direction. But just being in the room is not enough. Um, you really need, as I mentioned before, engineering fluency. Um, and if not, there's a risk of being left out of the conversations that shape the systems behind the words. And that limits our impact and our growth, not just from an organizational perspective, but also from a personal and professional perspective as well. We stop seeing ourselves in a way that brings value to the experiences that we want to see in the organizations that we work in. So let's just define what in the world I'm talking about. What is content engineering? The post that the screenshot that I shared at the beginning of this presentation was a LinkedIn post I shared maybe a month or two ago. And it started off with 5 years ago, I didn't know what content engineering was. And then I realized I was one. And, content engineering is a concept that, has existed for a long time and it is now finally getting a place and space within the content disciplines. It's not all lumped in together, much like content design, which is amazing. So, content engineering is the practice of planning, structuring, and enabling content to be created, managed and distributed effectively across systems and platforms. Okay, so um, I like to think of content engineering as like the invisible architecture behind every great experience. So it's not always visible to others, but you feel it when it's there. So a lot of people would ask me, "Oh, you do content? Does that mean you do marketing?" And I would say, "No, no, no." Maybe you've been in that experience too, because people always associate content with marketing. And as I was niching down on my expertise and my specialty in my last role, going from all content, including some of marketing, I actually lopped off part of my 10-person team and had them absorbed into marketing because I really wanted to focus on this invisible infrastructure, this back end component, modular way of making sure the experiences of content showed up on the platforms that I was working on. So, a more practical breakdown of what content engineering looks like, it includes planning is the first thing. So that means choosing the right platform, structure, and delivery mechanisms up front before you write anything down. What uh, vessel, what platform, what object is all of these things, all of this content gonna live in? And also, the next thing is structuring. So that means breaking content into consistent fields and patterns that can be managed easily. And that's what makes it modular as well. There needs to be structure. I was in a team meeting. I'm advising another client, and their developers are launching a food tech platform. And the engineers said, "Let's not worry about the structure now. We'll figure that out later." And I immediately broke into a hot sweat. Always needs to be structure, even in the early moments. The next thing that content engineering includes is enabling. So making the content usable across platforms. This is an integral part of what content engineering includes. So with the help of headless CMSs, APIs, and component-based design, this is what makes content usable everywhere. A very basic principle of content that we all know and love is to cope, to create once and publish everywhere. But in order to do that, you need structure. So it's the difference between a brochure PDF and a small block of content that can update itself, surface in voice search, or be translated in real time. As I worked in food tech systems and platforms over the years, I realized there's a lot of unstructured content out there. It's beautiful when you see it from the UI perspective, but underneath, it can't live anywhere else than where it is. So content engineering really helps teams to collaborate better across disciplines, to reduce duplication efforts, to future-proof their content so that it for whatever platform comes next. So you don't have to think about what's next or know what's next if your structure is there. And it's not just for tech companies either, even though I work with a lot of tech companies. Governments use content engineering to ensure legal consistency. Every time I see a content engineering role pop up, I'm like, yes. Pinterest has a VP of content engineering. Um, you know, Publishers use it to distribute articles. E-commerce companies use it to streamline their product details across dozens of platforms. So if content strategy is what we say and why, then content engineering is how it actually works. That's how I explain what I do. It's like I make sure things work the way they're supposed to. And so the core components are structure, metadata, content models, and systems. So these are not like buzzwords or hashtags. They're really the building blocks for sustainable, scalable content operations. So once you start seeing your work, your content through that lens, you won't really go back. You'll stop saying, what do we want to say, and start asking, how do we design this so that it works everywhere, now and in the future? So let's take just a simple example. So if I break a content module into fields like title, image, tags, and description, suddenly I can reuse it across an app, website, email, or post, social media post. Think of it like Lego bricks. Like Lego is a common analogy used in when we talk about content engineering. It's not Play-Doh. It's not. It has a structure. So if every piece of content is structured the same way, you can build any number of combinations. That's why it doesn't matter what new platforms or new features come out. The structure is inherently there. And so you can use it in landing pages, product cards, onboarding flows without starting from scratch. I'm working with a lot of content creators in food, and a lot of them have to do a lot of reuse. And when campaigns come and things like that, but as content creators, helping them structure their content so that it's not one and done, their content is truly evergreen, is something that's really important for any piece of content. So it's not about flexibility, it's really about saving time, avoiding duplication, and reducing risk. Because every time you have to create something, you risk it not being consistent. So what that looks like is, for example, you have one structured announcement, whatever it is, 75% off a mattress. So you use it in an app banner, your marketing email, your help center, or your internal documentation. Another example is if you have a quote, a structured quote or testimonial, where can that be used? You can use it on your product page, in your sales deck, and in a chat bot, or a product description. It can be because it's the content component, so it can be rendered differently on mobile, desktop, search previews, and integrations, all powered by the same data source. It's coming from the same place, but it's modularized so you can use it everywhere. Structured content is like your backstage pass to scale. It really helps you enable automation. It powers personalization. It supports accessibility and localization. I remember I was working on a really cool project in 2022 for a large retailer in the UK. And, I'm from the United States, so American English is my specialty, it's my native language. But because I worked in with a company where I helped build the structure of the back end, it was really easy to localize when we were like white labeling a recipe platform for them. And, even I knew which components needed to be localized, and I didn't have to create everything from scratch. It also helps with team collaboration. The human component is so important with structured content. Instead of rewriting the same thing 5 times for 5 different channels, you're building once and trusting the system to carry it forward. I've seen teams go from like, where did that sentence go to, oh, I managed to create this content model and reuse it through the CMS. It really reduces a lot of frustration and a lot of wasted time where people are just figuring out what to do and who owns what. So, the bottom line is structure turns content from an output to an asset. It really makes your work more adaptable and more maintainable and more powerful without losing hundreds of hours or even burning out. So in the beginning, I talked about the components of structured content and what they all include. Metadata is a huge component of content. Metadata is about content, and it gives your content meaning behind besides just the words. So it helps with sorting, filtering, accessibility, personalization, as I mentioned before. Um, and when I say metadata, I'm talking about alt text, tags, categories, timestamps. All of those things are really important metadata that is critical to every platform. Um, it's amazing how much metadata can be used to power new experiences. Uh, so so that means it's not just a nice to have. It's the difference between content that disappears and content that performs and content that's ready for an emerging platform or an emerging experience, a new feature that an organization wants to launch. So here's a good real life comparison that I like. When you take a photo on your phone and later your device can show you all the photos from last summer or just the one with dogs or the ones you took in Paris. This always amazes me because you forget, and the way it curates memories is really amazing. That's metadata in action. The photo is content, the location, the date, and the face detection. That's metadata, and it puts it together for this new. And the metadata had existed before these memories or these collages features were launched by these platforms, but they were able to take all this metadata and create a new feature. So the same thing applies to content in every industry. So to do this well, you have to think in systems. So when I tell people what I do, I help food tech platforms with their content systems. So it's not just one page. It's not about how content connects in one scenario, but how it connects across the whole experience, how it's governed, how it changes, how it scales. Um, and a sustainable system isn't just pretty. It isn't just really kind of engaging with a catchy hook. It's maintainable. That's how you know you have good structure. So content without a system is like wires without a circuit. So you can have a bunch of really good content pieces, but if there's no system behind it, they can't power anything together. Like, I don't know if any of you have that, in science class, you worked with the little circuit board and where the light bulb's supposed to turn on. And if one piece was missing, the light didn't turn on. It's the same thing. So systems thinking is about moving from what page are we working on to how does this fit into the whole. So if you are writing a help article, for example, it's about how that article connects to search, how that article connects to onboarding and support workflows. Nothing should exist in silo. You're not just designing a landing page. The UX designer says to me, "Hey, Sandy, can you look at this UX copy and make sure the navigation and the screens are right?" No, it's not just for that specific screen or set of screens. It's about how it connects, how the that page or those screens really draws or creates reusable content blocks and shares data with your CMS or your CRM or other experiences. If it is siloed, that means that there's no structure. So when you start thinking in systems, you ask yourself, okay, what happens to this content after we publish? How does it connect to other content types? How will it be updated over time? Who owns it? And what are the rules for changing it? So content engineering, content structure really goes hand in hand with governance. So a good content system just doesn't just launch, it grows over time. It's iterative. So great systems are modular. That means they're built from consistent and reusable parts. They're governed with clear rules and ownership, and they're flexible, ready to scale. Remember, omni-channel, it has to exist everywhere, or have the potential to exist everywhere. And it's connected, smart. That means it's tied to other systems like design, data, and engineering. A team I worked with used to manage all their content in giant Google Docs. A lot of us do this, right? Every time they launched a new feature, they'd copy and paste the relevant pieces into multiple platforms. And every change just took days. You have to do reviews, you're in sprint, you're in retros. But after a while, we introduced a simple system, structured content templates, reusable blocks, a shared content model. And suddenly they can make one change in one place. And that change would flow into product marketing support and sales because everybody was using a centralized a place to pull all that content from. So systems thinking saves time, reduces inconsistency, and makes the team feel less overwhelmed. Again, there always a human component to all of these things because it gave them visibility, clarity, and control over what was going on. And that's the real power here. Content systems aren't about control just for the sake of it. It's not about, who's on the Rasky chain or ownership, or it's really about making sure you can enable your creativity without it being a mess. So the next time you're in a kickoff or reviewing a workflow, you're in a retro or sprint, backlog meeting, ask yourself, what does the system plug into? And if the answer is none, this is your opportunity to say, how could it exist in a system versus in silo? So these are the three things that I believe every content designer should get familiar with. I worked in reverse. I started, really focusing on my role as content engineer, and then I started learning more about content design. So but I needed to do that actually. So I'm asking and encouraging everyone to do the reverse. If you're a content designer, start thinking from a content engineering perspective as well. So the three things that you need to learn is definitely content models. That's the first. So that's how content types are structured. Also schema and taxonomy. So how things are categorized. So thinking your menu navigation and the schema behind that. And also APIs, how structured content gets reused across tools. Um, and APIs have really changed the game when it comes to creating things from scratch. APIs have really powered content engineering in a lot of ways. So just understanding what these things are and how they support you in your own work is going to be extremely beneficial. You do not have to master these. You just need to know enough to ask the right questions. It's for your work in the places where you need to ask them, just to get everyone thinking, or even to bring awareness that there may be a hole that needs to be filled. So again, good news, you don't need to write code. I mean, I dabble in code myself, but like I'm no, code writing master. But you do need to ask questions about the structure. Um, you do need to advocate for scalability. And you do need to collaborate real closely with engineers and product managers. You're not just a writer, you're a systems thinker. That's how you have to kind of think of yourself. You're a systems thinker. Um, and I think it's a really important. I promote allyship, being an ally. Uh, in when I was really trying to advocate for a structure in within my last organization that I was with, uh, I felt frustrated, and I said, "Oh man, nobody's listening to me." And I realized that if I could create an ally in another team, someone who was thinking the same way as I was, there would be a mutual benefit because I could understand the pain points of another team, and also in the rooms that I wasn't in, have an advocate to start creating the changes that I want to see. So collaborating closely with engineers and product managers, meaning identify, think of that person in another team that you get along with, you have a meeting of the minds in a lot of ways. There's a mutual respect there, and book a 30-minute one-on-one and just have a chat about the things that you're thinking, and maybe the things that they're experiencing in their own teams, and see how you can come together to create more change. So there's some examples that I thought of too, where in a this idea of structured content engineering could be applied. So one client, structured their models for cross-platform use and saved hours of manual work. Like that's across the board, the low-hanging fruit benefit of structured content or thinking from a systems perspective. And another uh, client added tags and made their content discoverable by voice assistants. So maybe tags were used just for discoverability on the web to start off with, but then those same tags could be used on another platform like a voice assistant. And the third, they didn't plan their CMS structure, and their marketing team just hit one bottleneck after the other. So this is like the bad case. They're just using a CMS that is not designed for what they want to do as a company, or they're underutilizing the potential of the CMS and not creating the structure that is required from the beginning. And so, because it does take time, and maybe your stakeholders are like, you got to hit this KPI. You have to hit this milestone. We have this launch that we need to solve. And so then you're just kind of catching up and not seeing the results that you want to see. So I believe in working from the inside out. That means if you're on a team of content designers, or if you're on a team and you're the only content designer or content insert whatever discipline you're in, you don't have to, you know, do everything in one day. Start small, advocate or create or establish a precedent for change just within your circle of control. So that could look like using content templates with consistent fields. Start tagging your content intentionally. Think about your tagging structure. In the past, I worked on. I was leading my team, and I realized everybody was tagging content. Uh, Everyone was tagging content inconsistently. And so we had to create a tagging glossary. And then map where your content appears and how it's reused across your ecosystems. And when you're in product or dev meetings, here are questions that make you sound and be more strategic. What's the content model for this? Can this scale if we added 100 more pages? How is this content managed after launch? These are just simple questions. They're non-accusatory, but they really shift how you're perceived and the and what you are bringing to the table. And you shift from just being a content writer or whatever perspective they have of you as a content designer to a strategic partner to someone who has expertise beyond what beyond just the component or the content you're launching at the moment. You're thinking long term, you're thinking bigger. So here's what I want you to remember. You're probably doing a lot of this already. You're thinking about relationships, consistency, scale, but structured content is content strategy. Structured thinking is content strategy. We're just giving it a name and some technical backing. So overall, content is not static anymore. It's smart, it's structured, it's everywhere. And so, content engineering skills help you kind of future proof your role. And you don't need to code, you just need to be curious, consistent, and collaborative. So, by embracing these ideas and looking at content from another lens will actually help you to become a better content designer. So I thank you so much for allowing me to speak with everyone today. And, if you want to keep this conversation going, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for me, Sandie Markle. Subscribe to my newsletter, blueberrypie.blueberry.co. That's blueberry with an I, not a Y, where I talk about all things content engineering and food if you are a foodie like me. Thank you.